Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the San Diego Union High School District Financial Aid Night. My name is Jamie Cambra. I'm our counselor on special assignment of college and career readiness, and I am excited to be here tonight with an amazing panel to share information about the financial aid application and process to all of you. Hopefully, we have a lot of seniors and parents of seniors in the audience, and this is a great time early in this window of financial aid to learn this information so you can apply it to your own process. Before we get started, I'd like to share an overview of our fall virtual college and career webinar series. Hopefully some of you have been on with us before, but we did start about a month ago with the UC admissions webinar, and that is recorded and shared on our college and career website that we will reference throughout the presentation. We also had a private and out-of-state college admission webinar that was on September 17th. Tonight is our financial aid night. This is kind of our biggest one. We have a lot of information to share, and we're excited for the most updated information is ready for you. So we're glad you're here. And then our last webinar is October 22nd, and that is Mapping Your Career Journey. I'm also very excited about that one. We have quite a few presenters representing a lot of different programs to share with our students and parents about different career opportunities after high school. So all of these are available through your high school, and you do just need to register ahead of time on the Zoom registration link to get the access code. And like every other webinar, we do have a Q&R feature tonight throughout the webinar. So on the very bottom of your screen, you will see the Q&A icon, and that's where you can click on it and open the box and ask us and myself, any presenters, questions that you may have about what we've shared or questions you may already have that you would like us to cover. And we will respond to you throughout the webinar. We will also take note of the questions that are the most commonly asked and use those to do a live Q&A at the end of the webinar. We will also be recording this presentation. So if you have friends that didn't get to join tonight, please let them know it's recorded. It's all posted on the SDUHSD College and Career Events website. So there's a lot of ways to get to that. You could simply Google it and it will come up. You can ask your high school counselor. In the information that your high school counselors send regularly, it's always linked in there as well. Okay, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our presenters. Our first presenter tonight is Kelly Nearing. She is the Director of Financial Aid at the University of San Diego. We're so lucky she's been with us the past few years to present this information, and she's a huge resource and very knowledgeable on this topic. So we appreciate Kelly being here. And Nicole Schulman with the Cal State San Marcos campus. She's the financial aid advisor. She is here to represent Cal State San Marcos and all the Cal State campuses regarding financial aid and different systems and processes within that category. And then Julie Dougherty with UC San Diego. She's a financial aid counselor, and she's here to represent the UC system. And she obviously specifically works for UC San Diego. So we are so thankful to have Julie and Nicole here as well. And then Suhaili Cervantes with MiraCosta College. We've been partners for many, many years with Suhaili, and she's the Student Services Coordinator of Financial Aid. So she will speak to specific programs at MiraCosta. And then Allison Leo, who is our very own counselor at San Diego High School Academy, and she will present on the CADA and the CSS profile tonight. Sarah O'Clession, who is our TOSA of Inclusion, Intervention, and Outreach. She will present as well, and she's also behind the scenes doing all the important work of passing along the slides. And then again, myself, Jamie Cambra, and I will speak to the WUI, the Western Undergraduate Exchange Program. So you'll get to hear from all of us tonight. Next slide. And an overview of what we're speaking about, just so you can map out your evening with us. We will first start by sharing what an overview of financial aid is. Oftentimes people may assume that you understand all the pieces of that, but there's a lot of different details. So we want to start with the big picture. Then we'll go into the 2627 FAFSA form. I see an error on there. So it should say 2627. That's the current FAFSA form. And we will talk about that and how to complete the information required. We will also go into the California DREAM Act, often called the CADA. We'll talk about the Cal State San Marcos financial aid options and opportunities, UC San Diego financial aid options and opportunities, MiraCosta College financial aid options and opportunities, the CSS profile, and the Western Undergraduate Exchange, also known as the WUI. And then we will close the night with questions. Next slide, please. So, an overall, before we begin, I just like to kind of frame the conversation of making sure everyone's aware. Financial aid is offered to students who apply to both 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, and there's also many specialized programs that will offer financial aid. So, it's not just for 4-year colleges. Sometimes people ask that, and we'll go into that tonight. It is recommended for all seniors to complete the FAFSA or the CATA form, depending on their eligibility, and we'll go over that tonight. And then the deadline this year to submit the FAFSA form is March 2nd, 2026. It did open early this year, so the window is already open for students to work on these forms. And we'll talk about this tonight, but in a lot of cases, for students who may be applying early to colleges, it's better to complete these forms early as well. So that March deadline is truly like at the end of the deadline. It's not something to like wait until March to do, but it is open until then for students who need the time. Next slide. So we are going to start with Kelly Nearing. Kelly, thank you again for being here, and I'll pass it on over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Jamie. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kelly Nearing. I'm the Director of Financial Aid at the University of San Diego. I'm really excited to be here tonight. I love talking about financial aid. I like talking with students and parents and colleagues, the community. I feel like financial aid sometimes gets a bad rep because it is a confusing process and there are a lot of hoops to jump through. So hopefully tonight we can kind of demystify some of that for you, provide a lot of information for you, as well as resources so that way at the end of this, you know where to go from here. So, in order to apply for financial aid, everyone has to fill out a financial aid application. I'm guessing that most of you have heard of the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. That is going to be the application for our citizens and eligible non-citizens. And then we have the California Dream Act application, or what we call the CATA, and that is going to be for our undocumented students here in the state of California. And then in some cases, some schools will have an institutional DREAM Act application that typically is for undocumented students who are outside of the state of California. And so I just wanted to mention that, all three of these applications exist. And when you're applying for financial aid, you're really only filling out one of these top three. And in some cases, a school may utilize the CSS profile. Now, I know that most of you are familiar with AP coursework or the SAT exam. All of that is put out by the College Board, and the CSS profile is their application. Both the CATA and the CSS profile will be mentioned later this evening, and more information will be provided. So we're going to focus on the FAFSA for right now. So I wanted to show you what the FAFSA website looks like. That way, when you get there, you know you're in the right place. Jamie did mention that the FAFSA for the 26-27 academic year is currently open, which, yay, is so wonderful. I don't know if you have been following financial aid in the news, but over the past year or two, there has been some, shall we say, drama with the FAFSA. And so we're all very excited that the 26-27 application is available. We were told it would be available October 1st. It opened about a week early, and so we're very excited that students are able to now fill this out. I want to mention that if you fill the FAFSA out now, colleges aren't quite ready to communicate with you about your application, but you should submit it as soon as possible. We have to work through some things internally before we're able to actually accept the applications for the next academic year. So if you fill it out and you don't hear from any schools, don't worry. We're working on it, but we definitely want you to fill out that FAFSA as soon as possible. When it comes to filling out the FAFSA, both parent and student are what are called contributors. You'll see that word a lot. It just means that you're both contributing to the financial aid application. Students, you're going to start the application and then you're going to invite your parent to be a contributor to your application. Parents, you will then fill out your portion. The two portions come together and that is submitted to federal student aid, and that is your application for financial aid. So, a couple of reminders and tips when it comes to applying for financial aid. Parents, if you have already filled out a FAFSA for a child before the child in question, then you're probably familiar with the process, but I want to remind you that you have to complete an application for every child every year. So you are reapplying for financial aid every single year, and you are applying for each child that you have. Now, in order to sign the FAFSA, everyone has to have what's called an FSA ID. It's your Federal Student Aid ID, and that's basically your electronic signature for the FAFSA. Students, you'll have your own. Parents, you'll have your own. Parents, if you have multiple children in college, you will use your same FSA ID for all of your children. You're going to reuse this every single year, so make sure you keep that in a safe place. Now, typically the application will open October 1st. Last year, it was a little bit late. So hopefully moving forward, it will always be available around October 1st. And Jamie did mention that the California priority deadline is March 2nd, 2026. That is a very hard deadline. I'm hoping that you may be familiar with the Cal Grant program. And if you miss that deadline, the Cal Grant is lost, as well as some other institutional aid depending on the school that you attend. So making that deadline is so important. Now, whether you fill the FAFSA out tonight, in December, in January, even in February, it really makes no difference. Aid isn't really a first come, first serve kind of situation, but it is a you must make the deadline situation. So please make sure you submit that FAFSA by March 2nd, and please make sure you're checking that deadline every year. For years and years and years, it was March 2nd, but over the past couple of years, it's changed, not significantly, but as long as you remember beginning of October and beginning of March as your window to apply for financial aid, you'll be all set. When you go to fill out the FAFSA, it's going to ask you for prior year tax information. What does that mean? That means it's tax information from 2 years ago. I'm going to show you a chart in just a moment, but I don't want you to be worried that it's not asking you for current or last year's tax information. The FAFSA will ask you for tax information from 2 years ago. And once you get through the financial aid application process, I want you to know that there is an appeal process on the back end. We're going to talk more about this in a moment, but many parents will come to me and say, what was happening in my family 2 years ago is not what is currently happening, and there is an appeal process for that. But when you fill out the FAFSA, you have to submit the tax information that is requested. Even if you plan to appeal, you have to submit the requested tax information. You can't override it with current information. So this is that chart I was mentioning. So I wanted to give you a visual of this. You do not need to memorize this. I just wanted to show you that the tax year that you're using, the application year that you are applying in, and the enrollment period are all different. So for the upcoming academic year, the 26-27 enrollment period, when all of your children will be first year students, you're applying for financial aid now, so in the 2025 calendar year, and you're using 2024 tax information. So I wanted to show you what the next 4 years look like in terms of the tax year that you'll be using. Again, you don't need to memorize this. The FAFSA will prompt you, but that way you have an idea of kind of what tax year is applicable to which enrollment period. There is a process called federal verification that will impact a few students. I don't want to say a lot of students because honestly, this is a random selection done by federal student aid. But students that are impacted by this, it's so important that you understand this process. Federal student aid, which is the kind of the department within the Department of Education that monitors and organizes all of the federal aid, they do not publish who or how they select students, but students are randomly selected to be verified by a college. Basically, that means that schools have to verify the information that you put on your FAFSA. There's nothing that you did wrong. There's nothing that you did to kind of make yourself be selected. But if you are selected, it is imperative that you submit the verification documentation to your school as soon as possible. This is so important because if you are selected, the financial aid offer that you see is not official. Some schools will not even present a financial aid offer to you until verification is complete, but some schools will present a financial aid offer to you that is an estimate. And if you commit to a school based on an estimate and find out later that your eligibility has changed for the worse, it's awful for you, for us. It's just very sad and a horrible situation. And we're not saying that people lie on the FAFSA or purposefully put incorrect information. Sometimes there's a typo. Sometimes a question is misunderstood and verification fixes it, which changes financial aid eligibility. And we want that process to happen as early in the cycle as possible. So if you're wondering, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm selected, how do I figure this out? Contact the school. The schools that you have applied to can definitely help you with this process, and they can tell you exactly what they need. Again, this is something you want to do early. So if you apply for admission through the regular admission process, then you would have your financial aid information typically at the end of February or the beginning of March. And you're going to want to submit that verification information right away because typically you have to confirm with your school by May 1st. And that only really gives us kind of a 2 month window to have you submit the documentation and us process it. So please check with the college or the university that you're planning to attend to see if you need to submit this information. It won't impact many students, but those that it does, it's very important that they understand the process. Okay, so I might be the only person that gets this excited about financial aid, and perhaps all of my colleagues here on the call, which is why it's exciting for us to be here and sharing this information with you. So, when you fill out the FAFSA application, it's going to generate a number. This number is called the Student Aid Index. Now, parents, if you have filled out a FAFSA years ago, this is the old EFC or expected family contribution. Same number, but it went through a revamp and now has a new name, which I think is great because when I say expected family contribution, a family thinks that's what they're expected to pay to a university, but that's not what it is at all. The Student Aid Index, I think, is a much better name because I'm hopeful that it clearly explains that it's more of a score. So you fill out the FAFSA, and federal student aid runs you through a calculation to determine your student aid index. That number goes with you wherever you go. So you apply to 10 universities, your SAI is the same at every single university. It's unique to you, it follows you wherever you go. That number could be as low as negative 1,500. It could be as high as infinity, honestly. That number is one of two pieces that schools use to determine your aid eligibility. So great, you fill out the FAFSA, your SAI is calculated. What is the second piece? Next slide. The second piece is the cost of attendance. So FAFSA generates your or calculates your student aid index, and then you have your cost of attendance. This is going to be different at every school that you apply to. So again, your student aid index is the same, but the cost of attendance is what changes. So there's two kind of big buckets when you look at the cost of attendance. First, you have your fixed cost, or some schools may call them direct costs, and those are what you're paying directly to the university. So that's what you're going to see on your bill. That's going to be your tuition and fees, your on-campus room and board, and your university health insurance if you're using the university's health insurance plan. All college students are required to carry health insurance. Parents, if you're going to continue to keep your child on your own plan, they can waive out of the universities, but typically it's an active waive out process. So you're automatically enrolled and you have to actively waive out in order to not be billed. So you have these fixed costs that are paid directly to the university. You see them on the bill. That's what you're paying to the school. The other bucket are the variable or indirect costs, and those are costs that are not paid directly to the school, but they're costs that we know you're going to incur, and we want to give you financial aid to help cover those costs. So, that's things like books and supplies, transportation, and personal necessities. So we use all of these components to build your cost of attendance. The cost of attendance is primarily driven by where you're living. So typically there are three living options. You're either living at home, living on campus in the residence halls, or living off campus, maybe in an apartment where you're actually paying rent. The difference between off campus and at home is that paying rent component. So depending on where you live, we will build a standard cost of attendance. So you have your student aid index, you have your cost of attendance, and those are the two numbers that schools use to determine your aid eligibility. Now, at a school like the University of San Diego, where the total cost of attendance is $90,000, don't let that scare you. We offer a lot of aid. Versus San Diego State University, I don't know their cost of attendance off the top. Let's just say it's $30,000. Those are two very different cost of attendance. And if your student aid index is 10,000, then you have a lot more eligibility at USD because our cost is so high versus San Diego State because the cost is lower. Now, when it comes to determining the types of aid that you're eligible for, schools will always maximize your grant and scholarship aid first. I can't stress that enough. Oftentimes, students may feel that financial aid is, meaning the financial aid office, is not as helpful because they're not eligible for grants. But I'm telling you, we always maximize grant and scholarship aid first. And here you can see the types of aid that are offered at the University of San Diego. So you can see that there are many more grants and scholarships than there are loans. But I just want you to know that eligibility is really driven by that cost of attendance and that student aid index. Those are the two primary drivers when it comes to eligibility. You can see here that there are federal, state, and USD funds listed. And this is just USD. This is one institution. All schools offer different types of aid. Now, the federal Pell Grant and the federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, those are offered at all schools because they're federal grants. The Cal Grant, which is our state grant program, is offered at California schools. The USD grant, that's only offered at USD, but there are other grants at other schools. And so, really, this is going to come down to you applying. Once you're admitted, you'll receive your financial aid offers and sitting down and comparing those offers. We're going to walk through that in just a moment. So, when it comes to your offer, I don't want to say all schools do it differently. I know I wrote that here, but what I mean is there is not a standardized way in which we have to present the information to you. And when I say schools do it differently, some schools will email you. Some schools may actually mail you something. Some schools will require you to log into the portal to view a personalized website. There's a couple of different ways that we do it, and some of us call it a financial aid offer or a package or an award, and it all means the same thing. It's just the financial aid that you are eligible to receive. So when you receive all of your offers, my suggestion would be to compare them, print them out, have them all on the screen, because you're going to find that some schools offer aid up to the cost of attendance and some schools do not. So let's just walk through an example. Let's use USD, the University of San Diego, and San Diego State as our examples. And I just want you to know that prior to USD, I did work at SDSU, so I nothing but love for SDSU. But let's use them for our example. So at USD, we know our cost of attendance is $90,000. So you're going to see, actually, let's not use specific schools because that's gonna be confusing. Let's use just two different ways to present the offer. I'm sorry. So when you look at your first offer, if it is a $50,000 school and you're receiving $20,000 in grant funding, then you see this $30,000 gap. That can be scary when you look at it because you see, oh my gosh, I owe $30,000. There's no way I can do this. Because you only see, you have the $50,000 cost, $20,000 in grants, and then you see this big balance, $30,000. Second offer, same numbers, $50,000 school, $20,000 in grants, but then they show you $30,000 in loans, so the bottom line number is zero. Same cost, same grant eligibility, but they look very different, the bottom line figure. Because in the second example, it looks like, oh my gosh, everything is covered. When in fact, it's $30,000 worth of loans. In the first example, where we have that $30,000 gap, or you see that balance, there might be some fine print that says you can borrow a loan to help cover this cost. It's the same information, it's just presented in a different way. So when you're looking at your offers, you're really looking for kind of two big things. One, what are the fixed costs? So not the overall cost of attendance. We're not looking at books and supplies and personal necessities. What are the fixed costs? What do you have to pay directly to the university? And what is your grant and scholarship eligibility? Those are the two pieces you're really looking for. You're going to do that math, and then you're going to know, okay, what are we going to owe as a family to cover the fixed costs? Knowing, of course, that there are indirect costs that come along with going to college, of course, but really we want to know what we're going to owe the university. In some cases, it could be the full amount of tuition if you have no grant eligibility. In some cases, your grant eligibility might cover all of your tuition and all of your housing. So really, you're looking for total fixed costs and grant eligibility. That way you can figure out what is that difference. Then the conversation becomes, okay, can we do that? We can do that for 1 year, but can we do it for 4? This is a 4-year conversation that you're having right now. I realize that, college graduation seems far off, but it's going to go by like that. And you have to reapply for financial aid every year. If your finances stay relatively the same, your eligibility should stay relatively the same. Typically, tuition goes up, typically, housing goes up. So, knowing that there are some variables at play, as a family, you need to have that conversation of can we make this work for 4 years? If that answer is yes, okay, great, we keep moving on. If that answer is no, then you know that at the time of looking at your offer. The last thing we want is for a student to confirm, start their first year, and then come second year, they figure that they find that they are not able to afford it. That's horrible. When a student commits, we want to get them to graduation. That is our primary goal. But we need you as a family to have that conversation now with the 4-year plan. Students, you're going to be eligible to borrow some student loans. Parents, you're going to be eligible to borrow some parent loans. I can tell you at USD that 80% of the students are utilizing financial aid. That could be grants, scholarships, loans, work study, paying out of pocket, or all of the above. Financial aid isn't really oh, I'm just using this. Financial aid is more of I'm using this, and this to make it happen. And all of that will be on your offer. Bottom line, if you have questions, you give us a call. There are people behind the screens that want to help you. All of us here tonight, all of us that work at the universities, we want to help you navigate that offer so you can make the best decision. And it's confusing. It is. So if you have any questions, please reach out to the schools that you've applied to. Okay, so I wanted to mention financial aid appeals. When you apply for FAFSA and you get your student, or let's back up. You fill out the FAFSA, you input tax information from 2 years ago. You get your student aid index. You apply for colleges. You get your financial aid offer. And now you know that you have to appeal because your 2024 tax situation is a lot different than what's going to be currently happening for you come 2026, because this appeal process happens in the spring. Like the financial aid offers, schools do this differently. Some may ask you for a worksheet or just a letter or have you submit your actual tax return. It depends on the school, it depends on the appeal, but all schools offer an appeal process. And so this is, again, is something that you have to reach out to each individual institution to find out how they do it. And I would suggest doing that now, knowing the schools that you plan to apply to or have already applied to. See what their current appeal process is. Most likely, no one will have it available for the 26-27 academic year yet, but you can see what the current process is so that way you know what you'll have to submit. Because just like verification, there's a very small window for us to do this before you have to commit to the school, and you're going to want to submit that appeal as soon as possible in the spring. One last thing I want to mention is scholarship reminders. So unlike the FAFSA, scholarships have to be applied to individually. And so you're applying for each individual one, but I will say you don't have to recreate the wheel every time. So if the prompt is the same, use the same essay. Donors are not going to compare notes. And so you can use that same essay over and over and apply to as many scholarships as possible. Scholarships, they can, help supplement that financial aid offer. The kind of limit is your cost of attendance. So we can never give you aid that exceeds your cost of attendance. But man, the more outside scholarships you bring in, the more that we can reduce your loans or remove loans from your offer altogether. We want to maximize your grant and scholarship eligibility. We truly do. And so as long as you apply for those scholarships and are eligible, then we will do our best to have that coordinated with your financial aid. And the last thing I want to say is, as weird as it sounds, don't limit yourself to the internet only when it comes to scholarships. You would be surprised at how many scholarships are out there just by asking. And you never know, perhaps your parents' job or your church or your sports organization. You'd be surprised to see how many scholarships are out there. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Allison.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for being here tonight. So I am Allison Leo. I am from SDA and I am here to talk specifically about our CADA application, the California Dream Act application. And so here we have the website, and the California Dream Act is an application for our students who are eligible non-citizens who can apply for financial aid. And I do want to note, this is the first page of the California Dream Act application. And one question we often get is about the safety and privacy of families filling out the application. And I just want to point out that this is the most up-to-date message here on the page from our California Student Aid Commission about privacy. So please, look in and do some research and ask lots of questions if you have any questions about that. And so who is eligible to apply? So students who are undocumented or have a valid or expired DACA, U visa holders, and then any students with TPS status, temporary protective status. And then they do have to meet a few non-resident exemption requirements. And those generally, the way most of our students are eligible is because they've been students in California for at least 3 years, and they are going to graduate from a US high school. There are a few other ways. So if your student doesn't quite meet that requirement, please talk to your counselor or ask us questions tonight, and we can talk about some of the other ways that students can be eligible. And then what can students be eligible for? So the CADA, unlike the FAFSA, it does not go to the federal government. It only goes to the California Student Aid Commission, and it goes to the colleges that the student's applying to as well. And so based on that, students can be eligible for state-based aid. So that includes our Cal grants. And then there's a special work study program called the Service Incentive Grant, which again is where students will work in like a volunteer position, and they get a financial aid kind of stipend from that work. And then they can also be eligible potentially for any institutional aid, including grants and scholarships. And then what do you need to apply? So it's going to be similar to our FAFSA application. So students will need their Social Security number or ITIN number if you have one, and then tax information from 2024, and then asset information. It's the similar questions to the FAFSA about how much money you have in the bank, and a few other questions like that. And then our other application is the CSS profile. And so this application is run by College Board, the same company that does the SAT and our AP exams and our AP classes. It is a specific application that about 200 colleges around the US ask for. So it's very possible that many students will not need to fill out this application. That is determined by your school list. Okay, and we do have the link here, the colleges that use the CSS profile. And like I said, it's about 200. And so who needs to fill out this application? Anyone who's applying to one of those schools. Okay, it does ask similar questions to the FAFSA, but it also does dive in a lot deeper in trying to get a picture of your family's financial situation. But I do always tell students, if your college is asking for this application, it's usually because they have more aid that they want to offer. And so they're trying to dig deeper into your family's financial information to be able to determine eligibility. So it's a good thing, even though it's some extra work that has to be done. So that's the CSS profile. And now I'm going to pass it off to Nicole Schumann from CSU San Marcos.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Schulman. I'm a financial aid advisor at Cal State San Marcos, and I'm super excited to be here today and talk to you a little bit about our campus and the financial aid application process. So why financial aid matters? So there is free money for college, and we don't want any students to miss out on it. Over 80% of our Cal State San Marcos students receive aid, and this financial aid is used to pay tuition, books, housing, and more. And we encourage all students to apply early and on time for limited funding opportunities. So as mentioned earlier, there are 2 financial aid applications, the free application for federal student aid and the California Dream Act application. I'll go ahead and skip over this since we already talked about which students apply for which application. But something I did want to address is dependency status. We always get questions about this at Cal State San Marcos. So for the 26-27 award year, an independent student is one of the following: born before January 1st, 2002, they're married and not separated, a graduate or professional student, a veteran, a member of the armed forces, an orphan, a ward of the court, someone with legal dependents other than a spouse, and then someone who is unaccompanied and homeless or self-supporting and at the risk of being homeless. Another thing we want to talk about is a contributor. So what are contributors on the FAFSA? So a contributor is the student's spouse, a biological or adoptive parent, or the parent's spouse. What a contributor is not is a grandparent, foster parents, legal guardians, brothers or sisters, aunts and uncles, even if they help support the student financially. So there are certain steps that contributors have to take. And one thing that we want to make clear is that being a contributor does not implicate financial responsibility. So even if a student is paying for their education on their own, a contributor needs to provide their information. And if they do not provide it, it results in an incomplete FAFSA. So all contributors must have their individual email account. So the first step is that the contributor is going to receive an email telling them that they've been identified as a contributor. Then the contributor will log on to studentaid.gov and create an FSA ID if they do not already have one. So for example, if you have filed the FAFSA with your student in a prior year for a different child of yours, you can use the same FSA ID. Then the contributor logs into the account using their FSA ID with their account username and password. The contributor will review the information about completing their section, and then they provide the required information on the student's FAFSA form. So sorry, my screen just glitched. What you need to know about being a contributor: a student or parent's answers on the FAFSA will determine which contributors, if any, will be required to provide information. Students or parents invite contributors to complete their portion of the FAFSA or the CADA form by entering the contributor's name, date of birth, social security, and email address. Contributors must provide personal and financial information in their own section of the FAFSA, but they are not required financially to pay for the student's education costs. So more on the FSA ID, all students and contributors must create a studentaid.gov account to complete the FAFSA or CADA online. Users will be presented with the following questions in the account creation process. So personal information, which includes name, date of birth, social security number, account information, the username and password, contact information, communication preferences, challenge questions, and users will also be prompted to set up multi-factor authentication, and identity match with the Social Security Administration will be completed when a social security number is provided. So I saw a question earlier about divorced parents. The parent that contributes most to the student's living expenses is the parent that will provide their information on the FAFSA. If parents are contributing equally, then the parent with the higher income must complete the FAFSA. The other divorced parent's income will not be reported, nor will they be counted in the household size. The FAFSA will provide clear instructions on which parent should be providing income and household information and who should be reported in the household. To continue with the FSA ID, all contributors must have an FSA ID to access the 26-27 FAFSA online. Identity match is required for contributors to verify their FSA ID. Everyone goes through an identity match, even if there is a paper FAFSA. A verified email address will be required to establish an account, and users can apply without entering a social security number. And those users that do not have a social security number will complete a knowledge-based identity verification process. Alrighty, so a little overview of the FAFSA. Every required contributor must have an FSA ID to sign the FAFSA application, they have to give consent to transfer federal tax information from the IRS to the FAFSA. And if a student or contributor refuses, the student will not be considered for federal student aid, and without that data cannot be considered for state or institutional financial aid. So when completing the California DREAM Act application, students will need to create an account. Both the contributor and the student sections will be assessed and completed through the Students California DREAM Act portal. Students have access to both their section and the parent section. The application must be signed, or parents may provide their information for signature purposes. Establishing the student's account and obtaining the parent's signature is a more streamlined process compared to the FAFSA. Additionally, students are required to set up 3 security questions and enable multi-factor authentication for enhanced account security. So now to talk about the fun stuff after the FAFSA or the CADA is completed. The data, including the calculated SAI or Student Aid Index, will be sent to the schools listed on the applications. Some schools will send estimated offer letters to the applicants, others wait until admissions decisions are made. It just depends on the school. Most schools notify students of awards via email, so be on the lookout for that. Most schools are anticipating to provide financial aid offer letters before the admissions decision deadline, and check your selected schools' websites for updates. And then submit any requested documents to ensure accurate and correct financial aid offers. So if your student is selected for verification, most likely the campus will follow up with your student via email to request those documents. So how we calculate financial aid awards, there's one thing called the cost of attendance, and then we look at the student aid index and any other financial aid, and that equals your need, and that's how we determine your financial aid award. So just to go over some of the financial aid resources we have at Cal State San Marcos, to start out with grants, which is free money that doesn't need to be paid back. We have the Cal Grant, we have the Chafee Grant, and we have the Middle Class Scholarship. So something specific about the Cal Grant and Middle Class Scholarship, and those need to be submitted by the priority deadline, which is March 2nd this year. And then for federal aid, the Pell Grant, the State University Grant, and the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. Then there's multiple types of scholarships. There are private scholarships, which are administered outside of the university, and then there are university scholarships. There are loans, federal student loans, the Federal Parent Plus loan, and private loans. And then there's work study, which includes federal work study and the California DREAM Act Service Incentive Grant, or more commonly known as DSIG. So moving on to scholarships, some strategies for scholarships. Use a free scholarship search site and search for year-round open scholarships. Like mentioned earlier, you never know what type of scholarships are out there if you just ask. If you have an employer, take advantage of that and ask your employer for scholarships, and use creativity and talent for non-traditional scholarships that you might have a higher chance of retrieving. Here are just a few free scholarship search engines that you can use to find a scholarship. And then just to talk a little bit about our Cal State San Marcos General Scholarship application. So it opens when the FAFSA and the CADA open on October 1st. There's one application and it matches you to a variety of different scholarships based on your major, different programs you're involved in. And our scholarship website, which you can use the QR code for additional scholarship opportunities and deadlines, is provided on this slide. To apply for scholarships, you do have to be admitted to Cal State San Marcos. Once you're admitted, you can use your student ID number to possibly be awarded a scholarship. And if you have any questions for us at Cal State San Marcos, we have phone. You can call us, use our email, or even schedule a virtual appointment. And I'll pass it on to Julie.
Fabulous. Thank you very much for that information. My name is Julie. I am a financial aid counselor at University of California, San Diego. I'm excited to be here to chat with all of you on this new future endeavor that you guys are all embarking on into your senior year, possibly going on to college the next year. So I'm sure it's an exciting, stressful, scary time. Next slide, please. We're going to talk about financial aid and investing in our students and their future. As the other folks have stated, this is just some brief information. You do absolutely want to complete the FAFSA or the DREAM Act application every single year, as your aid can change every single year depending on the information that is entered onto that FAFSA or DREAM Act application. Again, applications open March 1st. UCSDs and Cal State, or I'm sorry, the Cal Grants the Cal Grants deadline is March 2nd. So you want to always make it a habit to complete your FAFSA or DREAM Act application on time each year to make sure that you are eligible to receive all of that priority funding and financial aid. Next slide. There is some information on how to apply for the FAFSA or DREAM Act application. You'll go to studentaid.gov or dream.csac.ca.gov. One very important thing that I am going to stress is to make sure that specifically for UCSD that you have the correct school code on your FAFSA. We have literally just faced it this past fall. We had hundreds, if possibly not even, up to 1,000 students, maybe not that many, but several students had the incorrect school code on their FAFSA of the University of San Diego, as it is fairly similar to the University of California, San Diego. So just make certain that you have the correct school code on either FAFSA or DREAM Act application of the school that you plan to attend. Next slide. Again, we do have the breakdown of the cost of attendance. And as mentioned prior, the cost of attendance is a maximum amount of what the university has determined is going to cost you in quotations to attend the university. It's going to include those direct costs such as your tuition and fees, room and board. It can be included if you do live on campus, but if you don't live on campus, the only thing that you will be charged from the university is for your tuition and fees. However, financial aid does offer you aid up to your maximum cost of attendance to include expenses such as room and board, such as books, materials, supplies, transportation expenses, personal expenses, things that you might not physically be charged from the university for, but as a student, we understand and know that you are going to have these expenses, which we do offer you aid to cover those expenses. Next slide. There's different sources that are offering aid is the federal government. That would be your federal Pell Grant, your federal loans. The state government, that's your state grants, Cal State, I'm sorry, I keep saying Cal State. The Cal Grant, the middle class scholarship, university aid. The UCSD offers specific university grants and university loans. And there is also private agencies. If you work with private lenders who are not associated with the Department of Education, you can apply through them to get certain loans as well. Next slide. This is the good part, the gift aid, the free money. This is what everybody wants. And those come in the form of grants, which is money that you do not have to pay back. And those grants can come from federal, state, or institutional sources. We also have scholarships that the university offers. Scholarships are money that you do not have to pay back. And again, those come from state, institutional, and private scholarships. The scholarships can be based on so many different things. They can be based on need, they can be based on merit, etc. One thing I want to comment about is that UCSD does not have a specific application that students need to complete to apply for scholarships for their first year. The application that they use to be admitted to the university is the same applications that our scholarships department is going to use to determine what merit-based scholarships you could be eligible for. Just one thing I want to make sure to tell you all is just when applying for the application for the student to become a student, make sure you talk yourself up, elaborate on those amazing things that you have done, because that is the application that our university uses to determine the scholarships that you could be eligible for. Next slide. Borrowing loans. Loans will be made available to the student. The Department of Education does limit the maximum that a student can borrow because they don't want the parent to go, or they don't want the student to go into too much loan debt. And then if there's additional loans that need to be borrowed, the parent can borrow those loans in their name. There are federal, state, and institutional loans. Loans are the ones that do need to be repaid. Some of the loans will not be accruing interest while in school. Those are the better of the two loans for the student. The subsidized loan is the one that is going to be interest-free, and it is not accruing interest while the student is enrolled. And then there is the unsubsidized loan. The unsubsidized loan, if you do choose to borrow that, that does accrue interest immediately. Either of the loans, though, however, are not required to start having payments made on those until 6 months after you graduate. It is a little bit different with the Parent Plus loan. The Parent Plus loan does accrue interest immediately, and the Parent Plus loan from the Department of Education, typically those first payments are due usually within 60 days of the first disbursement of the loan to the school. So repayment on the Parent Plus loans is due a lot sooner than the student loans. Next page. The university work study is another form of financial aid. Where it does get a little bit tricky is students will see the work study on their award letter or their package and assume, oh, I was offered $2,000 in work study. They think that that is funds that will actually pay into their account that goes to their balance. However, that is not how it works at UCSD. What students will do is they will obtain a job. They will work with our career services department to find a job on campus that works with their schedule, works in a position that they enjoy doing, and they will earn an hourly wage while attending school. You will get paid. It could be weekly, bi-weekly, depending on how the department does it. And you'll just gain fabulous work experience and some tremendous contacts that you'll make on campus as well. Next page. The UCSD Grant and Aid. This is a specific grant that the university offers, and it is only for California residents. If you are considered a non-resident of California, unfortunately, you are not going to be considered for the UCSD grant. It does vary based on your financial need. So the information that you fill out on the FAFSA or DREAM Act is going to determine your need for aid, which then determines the amount of grant aid, if any, we are able to offer to students. It is funds from the University of California, and this year, the university is extremely strict on the deadlines. I'm just speaking specifically for current students. If they did not have their FAFSA submitted by the deadline of March 2nd, our current students are not receiving UCSD grants, and it can be up to $20,000 to $30,000. So it is very important that you get those FAFSAs and all documents in on time by the deadline. The Middle Class Scholarship. The Middle Class Scholarship is a scholarship that comes from the state of California. It is specifically for California residents. They do have some requirements. Your total family income has to be below $234,000 or less for dependent students and $145,000 or less for independent students. You do have to have submitted your FAFSA or DREAM Act on time and qualify for the financial aid. And you cannot already be receiving grants and scholarships that cover the total system-wide tuition and fees to receive that middle class scholarship. It's a tricky award, it's a moving award, and it is determined from the folks at the California Student Aid Commission, determining from your student aid index how much you could be eligible for. The Blue and Gold Opportunity Plan is another funding plan that the university does offer. It is specifically only for the University of California schools. You must be a California resident and your family income must not be above $80,000. You do have to qualify for need-based aid, such as the Cal Grant from the FAFSA or DREAM Act application. You have to have submitted your FAFSA or DREAM Act on time. And the other tricky thing about the Blue and Gold Opportunity is if you are already receiving the Cal Grant or funds that are covering your tuition and fees, you will not get the Cal Grant and the Blue and Gold Opportunity Plan. They are both designed to only cover tuition and fees, so you can only get one or the other. But if you're not receiving the Cal Grant and you have aid, but your aid does not cover your tuition and fees balance, and as long as you've met all other stipulations, you could then be eligible for that Blue and Gold Opportunity. Next page. The Native American Opportunity Plan, it fully covers your in-state system-wide fees, tuition, and additional fees that are covered from Student Financial Solutions. You have to be a current or a newly admitted undergraduate or grad student to be eligible. You have to be considered a California resident for tuition purposes. The Financial Aid Office at UCSD does not determine residency status. So if you do have questions about residency, you will need to contact the residence deputy in the registrar's office, and they are the ones that will determine whether your student will be considered an in-state or an out-of-state resident. So for the Native Opportunity Plan, you have to be an enrolled member in a federally recognized Native American, American Indian, or an Alaska Native tribe, and the student must have submitted the FAFSA or DREAM Act application. So one thing about this is UCSD will typically reach out to you directly if you qualify, as there's a lot of information that is moving behind the scenes. Next slide. So where to find private scholarships? I know on a previous slide, it was saying look out for scams, because sometimes there are a lot of scam websites, but I can confirm with you that these websites that we have listed here are specific, good, non-scam websites. And as I did mention, the application that you submit to become a student at UCSD is what is used for scholarships for your incoming year. But if you were to attend UCSD and come in for your second, third, or fourth year, we also have an additional merit-based application that opens up to all students typically in December, where you can apply for scholarships for the following year. So this is some good scholarship information for you to check out. We also work with special circumstance appeals, going back to what the previous person had stated. If you submit your FAFSA and you used your 2024 taxes, but it's currently 2026 and your situation has changed. Maybe you have lost your job. Maybe your hours have decreased. Maybe your marital status has changed, or you do have some extremely high medical or dental expenses. You are absolutely able to submit an appeal, and the Financial Aid Office will review all of the information that is submitted. You're going to want to paint the picture for them to tell them what your situation is, and they will review it to determine if then you could be eligible for additional aid. UC San Diego's current process has been, these appeals become available late August for students. Typically, we do not process the appeals until late fall, early winter. So what we encourage all students is that you will need to prepare to pay your fees with the original award letter that you are given. And then once your appeal gets processed, you could be reimbursed with any additional aid that you could be eligible for. You are able to do a calculation on the Department of Ed's website to kind of give you an idea of what your student aid index might be using your 2026 tax information. So if you're wanting a better understanding of what your financial aid could look like after you submit the appeal, you can do that on the Department of Education's on the studentaid.gov website. Next slide. Our office is open. We offer several different ways to contact us. Absolutely visit our website. We are on Instagram. We do some fun little reels. We have in-person advising on campus in the Student Services Center. We also offer virtual counseling where you can log in and join a Zoom meeting. You can share your screen. We can share our screen. You can contact us via phone. And the university has also kind of stepped away a little bit from doing emails, and we have gone towards a ticketing system. And all of these ways that you can contact us can be found on our website. It is also extremely important that you check out our contact page anytime you do wish to contact us for our hours of operation, because sometimes during our busy times, we might close the office to do processing. We don't want you to make a trip in if you don't need to, and if we are closed. So we do highly advise that you check out our current hours of operations. And again, that school code, our UC San Diego school code is the 001317. It's tricky when you pull it up on the FAFSA, because if you search San Diego, it will pull up the University of San Diego, and that's fabulous if that's where you're going to attend, but it's not so good if you're actually looking to attend University of California, San Diego. So I thank you, and I am going to pass the next slides off to Sue Haley.
Thank you so much, Julie. Hello, everyone. My name is Sue Haley Cervantes. I am the coordinator for the financial aid office at MiraCosta. MiraCosta College is a community college, so I will be speaking specifically about financial aid at MiraCosta, but the things that I speak about also apply to other California community colleges. So Palomar, if your students are interested in that, all of this information would apply to that as well. So I just wanted to start with that. And because I knew that a lot of these amazing presenters were already going over so much information, I'm going to go over some relevant MiraCosta and then kind of just some general financial aid information that would maybe works a little bit different with a community college. One thing that is pretty standard, like everyone has been mentioning, is there's federal financial aid, there's state financial aid, and then there's financial aid that the institution will give you. So all of my amazing colleagues from UCSD, Cal State San Marcos, USD, all of them have been giving you information that you can receive from federal financial aid and state financial aid, and then from their own institutions as well. So it's the same thing at a community college. You can get federal financial aid, state financial aid, and then MiraCosta has like our own financial aid programs as well. I like to split them up into categories for people to see, I'm not going to go over each of these grants in detail, but it's just to show the number of grants that are available to you, you and your students. If by just completing one application that we've all been talking about, the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application, there are thousands and thousands in free money from every category: federal financial aid, state financial aid, and then from the institution. What's really great, like we've been mentioning, when you're doing the application, you're automatically applying for all of these, the federal and state financial aid automatically. And then at MiraCosta and at most colleges, they use your FAFSA or your California Dream Act application to determine what you would qualify from that institution. So MiraCosta does the same thing. We'll, based on your applications, if you report you're a first-time student, we'll give you the promise, which I'll go into the promise a little bit more later. Next slide, please. Okay, so I know we've already gone over the FAFSA and the California Dream Act application, who can apply for what, but just to really reiterate, you as the student and the family, you're only completing one of the two applications. Next slide, please. So we've already covered who can apply for what. I just wanted to reiterate this information and add a little bit more information. So students, families only need to do one, like I said. And so who is eligible to complete which application? So for the FAFSA, it's listed there. It's any student who is a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, and then maybe holds another status. And that is regardless of whether, if the parents are undocumented, or if, let's just say, if I was married, if I'm a U.S. citizen, but my spouse is undocumented, I can still complete the FAFSA and then provide my spouse's information on the application. And then the California Dream Act application is for students who are undocumented, who have DACA valid or expired, and then all of those other statuses there as well. Something that's fairly new this the state of California, what they have done in response to everything going on with the current administration and immigration, they have opened up the California Dream Act application for students who are U.S. citizens. So that example that I gave a second ago, if I'm a U.S. citizen and normally I would complete the FAFSA, so the FAFSA is an application that gets processed by the federal government. So a lot of families have been a little bit nervous to provide their undocumented family members information on that application because it gets processed by the federal government. Now, I will say that the Federal Student Aid, which is the organization that processes the FAFSA, they don't anticipate the application ever being used for immigration purposes. But for those families that are uncomfortable with providing their undocumented family members information on the application, they have the option now to complete the California Dream Act application. So for the example I was giving, if me as a U.S. citizen wanted to complete the California Dream Act application because my spouse is undocumented, I could do that. Now, there are implications to that, such as if I'm a U.S. citizen and I do qualify to complete the FAFSA, but I choose to do the California Dream Act application, I am not going to be, my eligibility will not be determined for federal financial aid, meaning I won't receive any federal financial aid. I will only receive the state financial aid, which is okay, and that's an option for families. If that is the case for you, or if it's the case for someone that you know, reach out to the financial aid departments at the colleges that you're going to, just because you want to make an informed decision. You want to know what types of aid you're not going to receive if you do decide to do the California Dream Act application. Also, if you just want a little bit more reassurance about completing the FAFSA as a student who has undocumented family members, please do. You can always reach out to, even if you're not attending MiraCosta as well, like you can always reach out to us. We're always pretty open, and I know that all my colleagues and their financial aid offices are probably the same. So feel free to reach out to us to ask questions about those things. Next slide, please. Okay, so something I always say in every presentation I do, and something that every person has said so far, if you don't remember anything else, please remember to complete your application by the priority deadline for the state of California, which is March 2nd. If you go to a four-year university, this is a hard deadline, meaning if you don't apply by March 2nd, you will not be considered for any of the state grants. The state grants, by the way, at every college, including at a community college, is thousands and thousands and thousands of money that you could be receiving. It's free money that doesn't have to be repaid. And if you don't complete it by that date, if you're going to a four-year university and you don't complete it by that date, you're not going to be considered for the money that you might have been eligible for just because you did it after the deadline. If you're attending a community college, there's still an opportunity to still receive the state financial aid. We have like a second deadline specifically for community colleges. It's September 2nd, but truly and really, honestly, you should try to complete your application by March 2nd anyways, because of if you're going to be applying to multiple schools, you want to make sure you meet that deadline. So if you don't remember anything else, make sure you apply by March 2nd. And everyone else that's applying, that does their application by March 2nd, the only difference between getting state money potentially, you do have to qualify, obviously, based on the information you provide. But like if you qualified, if you qualified for thousands and thousands from the state of California, the only difference that you're doing is doing it by March 2nd. So please be sure to do your application by March 2nd just to receive more money. Thank you. So the Cal Grant is the state grant that we've been referring to. It's, like I said, thousands and thousands in free money that you could potentially receive. And one of the things about receiving the Cal Grant is if you receive the Cal Grant, then the state of California has other grants that are tied to receiving that one. So that's why it can also equal up to so much money, because if you don't receive the Cal Grant, then you can't receive these other grants either. One of the programs, it's a fairly new program in like the past 4 years or so. There's a program where students who are undocumented can complete grants for doing community service or volunteer work. And there's a little bit of information about that on there. And then there's also at a community college specifically, the state of California has created an incentive grant for students to be enrolled full-time. And that is really to incentivize completing their time at a community college within 2 years. So that way they can transfer if they need to, or get their associate's degree or get their certificate. But the incentive grant, if students enroll full-time or more, then they can get the additional amounts that are shown on the screen, which for reference is either $2,596 per year or up to $8,000 per year. So it's a pretty substantial grant if students are able to enroll full-time. What I always like to mention, since I'm on speaking about being enrolled full-time, it is not a requirement. Like in general, it's not a requirement to be enrolled full-time in order to receive financial aid. You can be enrolled in one class, or you can be enrolled in 12 units, and then you'll still be able to receive some form of financial aid. The financial aid is adjusted based on the units that you're enrolled in. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is one of the biggest incentives to attending a community college. The state of California has a program where you can, any first-time college student, and when we say a first-time college student, we don't mean first time in their family, like, or first generation. We mean the student themselves. So all of the students that are high school seniors right now going to be graduating soon, all of them would be considered a first-time college student. Even if they've taken college credit classes while they were in high school, they'll still be considered a first-time college student. Any student who's taken like summer classes up until now, they're considered a first-time college student. Their first fall or spring semester that they enroll, they'll be considered a first-time college student. For this specific program, the MiraCosta Promise, they do have to be enrolled in 12 units, and then they have to apply for financial aid through the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application. And what it does is those students get guaranteed, regardless of the income reported on the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application, their tuition is paid for, their fees are paid for, and then they get help with textbooks. So the MiraCosta Promise essentially means 2 years. The first 2 years are for free. And so the book voucher amount, so help with textbooks, that might be different based on the community college that the student decides to go to. But at MiraCosta, it's a $200 credit at the bookstore. That doesn't sound like a lot, but most of our classes are they have geared towards very low cost textbooks or no cost textbooks, meaning they don't have, students don't have to pay for textbooks. So $200 is actually more than enough for students, and they usually have enough to even buy supplies like backpacks and pens and other things that they'll need. So it's usually plenty. Let's just say your student is going to take more than 2 years, or let's just say you want to take, if you're the parent, if you want to take classes, if I've already gone to college, but if I wanted to take classes, there's another program called the California Promise. It sounds very similar. That is anyone who qualifies based on income and being a California resident or qualifying for like California resident tuition. All you have to do is apply using the FAFSA or the Dream Act application, and then the college will determine your eligibility. And that applies for as long as you're enrolled at a community college. If it could be, we have some students that have taken classes for fun at MiraCosta for like the entire time I've worked there, which has been 9 years. And they still qualify based on their income, so they can continue to get their tuition paid for. So the California Promise just pays the tuition. It doesn't pay for the fees or the books. But the fees at a community college are pretty low. They're usually less than $50 per semester. Next slide, please. Okay, so after you've done your application, this is kind of what to expect. I've found that it helps families to kind of get an idea of what the process is once they've done the application. So something I don't actually have laid out here, but something that kind of helps people understand like how their eligibility is determined is you'll complete the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application. If you're completing the FAFSA, what happens is the federal government determines your eligibility, and then they'll send it to the state of California. The students here are going to be California students, so they'll send it to the state of California. And all the colleges. Something I don't think I've mentioned is when the student is doing the FAFSA or the Dream Act application, they can put all of the schools that they are thinking about going to. So they can put MiraCosta, even if they don't plan on going there, they can just put that as a backup. They can put as many up to 20 colleges on there. And so when they submit their application, if it's the FAFSA, the federal government will process their eligibility, send it to the state and all of the schools that they've applied to. And then the state of California determines their eligibility, and all of the colleges determine their eligibility and then that's what creates that offer letter that some folks have spoken about already, that lists everything that you're eligible for. Oh, I think the presentation went away. Or is it just me, maybe?
No, it did go away. Sarah, do you have the presentation? So Haley, I'll add it on in just a second.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep speaking about the process. So that's if you complete the FAFSA, and if you complete the California Dream Act application, the California Dream Act application only ever gets processed by the state of California, which is also going back to what I was saying earlier, why some families feel a little bit more comfortable. That application never gets sent or processed by the federal government. It only gets processed by the state of California. And then similarly to the FAFSA, then after the state determines your eligibility, then they'll send it to all the colleges you've listed on your application. So that's just to provide some context of like understanding how and when how and when your eligibility is processed by each of like the different institutions that are processing it. So that's that. You've submitted your application. All of the colleges will start to send you notifications of your eligibility if anything's being requested from you. So it's really important that the students start checking their emails. And then if anything is being requested, they want to submit those documents. Every college has their own way that they set up the payments for students. We partner with a third-party company. It's a fully online bank to send students their payments, but every college does it a little bit differently. But if your student qualifies to receive money, they'll have to set up their direct deposit. They'll enroll in classes. There is a deadline to enroll in classes in order to still be eligible to receive financial aid. So just have your students be very mindful of all deadlines, regardless of where they're going to. Once all of that is received, if anything is requested, once the student enrolled, students will receive final award offers, offer letters if anything has changed. It might be revised. If anything has changed from what is reported, those offer letters may be revised, sorry. Then if the student is eligible, they'll start receiving their money. And then I can't remember, but I think their academic eligibility is a factor as well. So students have to maintain certain academic requirements. Those requirements are the student needs to maintain a 2.0 GPA. They need to complete at least 66% of the units they enroll in, 66.67 to be exact. What that means is if I enroll in 10 units, I have to complete at least 7 of the 10 units that I enroll in to meet that 66% completion rate. And then finally, at a community college, and actually at every college, there is a unit limit. So there's a limit to the number of units you can take at each college, and it depends on the student's specific major and what type of college they're going to, but there are unit limits in order to continue to receive financial aid. Next slide, please. Like every other college, MiraCosta has our own scholarships. As previously mentioned, you do actually have to complete the FAFSA, or the California Dream Act, in order for us to process your scholarship application. MiraCosta has one, this is our QR code to our website if anyone is interested in looking at our scholarships. I will have a QR code also that links to our general website in a second. So one of our biggest scholarships is called the annual scholarship. What's really, really unique about our scholarship application is it's one application and students are automatically applied and matched to over 200 scholarship opportunities. And each of those scholarship opportunities range from $500 to $2,000. And that's really cool because a lot of the times you'll have to find individual scholarship applications and do each process separately for each $500, $1,000, $2,000 opportunity. We have this one scholarship, and those are the dates there, August 1st through September 14th, typically. So your students won't apply until next August. But it's a great opportunity because it's a time saver. You do one application and you're applying to a bunch of different scholarships. So it's a really great opportunity. All MiraCosta students are eligible, undocumented students, high school seniors even. So as long as they plan to attend MiraCosta and enroll in 6 units in the fall and have a 2.0 GPA or higher, then they are eligible to apply as well. And then even international students are eligible. That is our scholarship coordinator's information. That's not my information. That's how she is available. You can also just find general information on our website as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is how you can get connected with us. It's our contact information in the middle column there. We do have workshops where we are supporting students in completing. I'm sure Jamie will talk about other opportunities that they're offering as well to support students in completing their financial aid applications. We also offer workshops where we help students and their families complete the FAFSA or the California Dream Act application. Those are on our website, on our Instagram. We welcome everyone, even if you don't necessarily plan on coming to MiraCosta. We know how difficult it can be to reach out for help and find help for financial aid, but that's why we're all here to make ourselves available to you all. So feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to get connected with us through any of these modalities. And thank you for your time. And I'll pass it on to Jamie.
Thank you, Sue Haley. This is all such great information. And those of you still on the call, thank you for bearing with us. We have a few more buckets of great information that we'd like to share. So I want to speak about the Western Undergraduate Exchange. Many of you have probably heard about this before. We reference it a lot as the WUE, and it's the acronym WUE. So this was an agreement founded in the late 80s, and it involves most of the West Coast of the United States, and it has reciprocal tuition exchange programs. So overall, they share that it shares or saves students nationwide over $400 million a year. Next slide. And this map shows the states that do participate in the WUE. A lot of our students benefit from this program who attend University of Utah, Boise State, Oregon State. The goal is that each campus has their own WUE practices. So it's really important if your student is applying to colleges in these states that you research their specific WUE program. Next slide. In general, the whole purpose of WUE is for example, California residents that go to Idaho, that they are paying more comparable to an in-state tuition versus out of state. So for example, in a very simple term, if an in-state tuition is $10,000 and an out-of-state tuition for that same campus is $25,000, a WUE offer would allow for 150% of in-state tuition, which would make the total $15,000. So $5,000 more than a non-resident would pay. So it's a significant savings in relation to the non-resident payment. Next slide, please. What's important to know is every campus has different calculations and qualifications. So in general, to qualify for the WUE program, the colleges will look at the student's GPA. So they usually reference like a 3.0 GPA is required to be considered for the WUE. In some cases, they may look at test scores. There's always deadlines. So for students who are applying to a lot of the campuses I referenced, the key is that they're applying early, so they will be considered for the WUE. So you want to make sure to look at the specific deadline. In some cases, there is a separate application. Some cases, they do minimize or limit it to certain majors. And there are different rules for freshman students and transfer students. So we want to ensure that when you're looking at colleges in these states, you really dig deeper on the restrictions. Next slide, please. For students to apply, like I said, a lot of campuses, you don't have to do a separate application. You're considered for the WUE within the regular application, and they consider it a merit scholarship. And in other cases, you do have to submit an actual separate application. For example, we listed at the bottom, there are some campuses like University of Arizona. They only offer a WUE opportunity for 2 majors, mining and geological engineering, and their natural resources, College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. So as you can see, that's more of a smaller portion of students that may be eligible for this scholarship. Next slide, please. And then maintaining the WUE is really important. And we just want to acknowledge that once a student is admitted and chooses to attend the campus under the WUE agreement, they are required to maintain a certain GPA. Sometimes based on their major, once they go into the full major, they may have a change in GPA. Sometimes there's different limitations on the credits that they have to be enrolled in. So these are things just to continue to ask and research on the campuses that your student may be applying to. Next slide. And now I'm going to pass it over to Sarah. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Jamie. So something exciting is that Californians without a high school diploma can access federal financial aid primarily through Pell Grants to attend college classes thanks to the Ability to Benefit program, which is increasing opportunity and access to higher education, trainings, and jobs. Students participating in the Ability to Benefit process will also have support for their education goals and access to counseling and academic support, including math and writing workshops, tutoring services, accessibility services, and more. California is the 7th state to simplify the federal government's permission. Until last year, a student without a high school diploma had to either complete 6 credits of college classes or pass a qualifying exam to access federal aid. For more information on how to access this program, please reach out to the financial aid office at the prospective college or career institute that you are interested in. And I'm going to be passing it back off to Jamie. Thank you so much.
I'm back. Thank you. And we are getting to the end of our presentation, but what's really important is we want to share where you can find this information. So we will post this presentation and recording on the district website, the College and Career Events website. Once you're there, you can see we provided snapshots. There's a financial aid resources tab. There's also a scholarship list tab. I know someone asked about that in the Q&A and I linked it. So please be sure to check that out. Next slide. Someone also asked to reshare. Oh shoot, I didn't add it. Okay. Some people were asking to reshare the scholarship pages that the Cal State and UC referenced and MiraCosta, and those are all in the presentation. So those will be accessible as soon as tomorrow on the website. These resources are linked that we referenced in the presentation. So the actual link to the FAFSA form, the CADA form, the profile, the WUI, USD's Financial Aid Office, Cal State San Marcos Financial Aid Office, UCSD Financial Aid Office, MiraCosta Financial Aid Office, and we also included the MiraCosta Financial Aid Estimator. Next slide, please. And now we have a few questions and answers or Q&A that we'd like to administer for the next 5 or 6 minutes that we have left on our call. So I'm going to ask some questions and hopefully our panelists can put the camera back on and respond if they're willing and able to. So the first question does apply to the UC, Cal State, and Common App colleges. And the question is personal information and parent information included that the student includes on the actual UC, Cal State, and Common application? Is that information used in any financial aid calculations? So separate from the FAFSA or the CADA form, is the actual information that's shared on the application to the university, is that used in the financial aid calculation? So we can start with Kelly and see if she is able to answer that question. And if she's unavailable, we can ask Nicole or Julie.
Jamie, I feel like since that's Common App, or that it would be better from a UC perspective.
Yeah, we can, let's see, Julie, do you want to chime in?
Yes, sorry, I'm very dark here. I do not believe that that information is used for any financial aid calculations. No.
That's what I know to be true too, but I just wanted to double check. So for those of you that are currently working with, either you're the student or you're working with your student and completing the application, that information, from my knowledge, is used for the admissions committee to understand circumstances. It is not connected to financial aid calculation. That is done, and correct me if I'm wrong, strictly through the forms we've referenced tonight. Let's see, Nicole, did you have any changes, or is that accurate for the Cal State system?
That is also accurate for the Cal State system.
Thank you. Perfect. There was someone who asked, how do you describe unique circumstances when submitting the FAFSA form? So obviously it's a really specific questions that it asks, and the families may not feel like they can tell the whole story. Is there an opportunity to do that, and how can they do that? Julie, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. There can be unique circumstances, absolutely. And our office in particular, our higher level supervisors handle all of those specific unique circumstances, like first appeals, maybe possibly a student according to all documentation, they should be a dependent, but they have extenuating circumstances that might prevent them from obtaining their parental data. Absolutely. Those can be chatted through our supervising folks who actually review those documents specifically pertaining to those examples. Yes.
So in that situation, students or parents can contact the financial aid office of the campus they're specifically planning to attend to really dive deeper on the award letter and kind of go through the details and if they're eligible for, like we talked about, appeals or just considerations of other
Correct.
circumstances.
Yes, and then the counselor can guide them how best to approach the situation.
Perfect. And I think Sue Haley's chart was really helpful in the timeline of how everything works, where families submit the FAFSA or CADA forms, then it's processed in the financial aid office. Simultaneously, admissions decisions are made. So we always recommend that students, once they find out which campuses they're admitted to, and then they can reference the award letters, you're really looking at the full package and deciding which campus you plan to attend. And sometimes that's where those conversations with financial aid offices can happen if significant changes have been made since you submitted the FAFSA, or if there's a circumstance that you were unable to kind of really clarify. You can always talk to your school counselor first just to get specific guidance on how to proceed there. Okay, final question, and I think Kelly might be a good one for this, more of a Common App or private college question. For need blind versus non-need blind campuses, how does that impact admission? So considering again, like if a campus has a policy that they don't look at need versus if they do look at need, does that impact financial aid at all?
That does not impact financial aid eligibility. No. So financial aid eligibility is strictly coming from the FAFSA data. So that student aid index and the cost of attendance. And then every financial aid fund has its own rules and regulations. And so the school will use those rules and regs to kind of build the financial aid offer. But the need aware or need blind policy has no bearing on financial aid eligibility.
Perfect. Thank you. I believe that is it. There were a lot of great questions in the Q&A. This is a link of all of our high schools and to the counseling office so families can investigate. Hopefully by now you know who your counselor is, but if not, you can always contact your school counselor. As referenced earlier, our high schools also offer financial aid support opportunities. So if you want to find out more about that, you can call your counseling office or email your counselor and they can give you more information as well. Thank you all for coming tonight. A special thank you to our presenters. We hope this was helpful and many of you are still on the call, so I think that means it was. Have a great night. And again, this will be posted hopefully by tomorrow with the recording, definitely the presentation on the SDUHSD College and Career Events website. Thanks again. Have a good night.